A profound moment in American history. A former president of the United States, now a convicted felon. Former President Donald Trump receiving that guilty verdict on all 34 counts in connection with the hush money payment to an adult film star, Stormy Daniels. Trump calling the ruling a disgrace. After the outcome, he returned back to Trump Tower in Manhattan. Take a listen. Cheers and jeers as the crowd gathered to see the former president returning from his trial. He appeared serious and confident as he raised his hand to acknowledge his supporters. Moments earlier, Mr. Trump had addressed the media outside the courtroom, calling the trial rigged. Reporter Robert Costa has more on the verdict and what this means for the GOP's presidential nominee.
The 7 men and 5 women of the jury decided Donald Trump's fate in just over 11 hours.
This was a disgrace.
Enraging the former president, who said the real decision will come in November.
The real verdict is going to be November 5th by the people.
Judge Juan Merchan announced he will sentence Trump on July 11th, 4 days before the Republican National Convention. He faces up to 4 years in prison, but could be given probation with no jail time. As the verdict was read, Trump sat expressionless in the courtroom.
The jury spoke decisively. It spoke unanimously. There wasn't really any doubt at the way that they were coming out in this case. It was faster, I think, certainly than I and I think a lot of other people who have been following this trial very closely would have anticipated, just given the length of the trial, the number of witnesses, the complexity of the issues, the fact they had 34 counts to resolve. That was unusual.
Trump was found guilty of 34 counts of falsifying records to cover up his alleged sexual encounter with Stormy Daniels during his presidential run in 2016. The jury, perhaps swayed by the prosecution's key witness, former Trump attorney Michael Cohen, who offered crucial testimony that directly implicated Trump in falsifying the $130,000 payment. Daniels herself testified in graphic detail in the trial. As they began their deliberations Wednesday, jurors asked to rehear key pieces of testimony, specifically about the 2015 Trump Tower meeting with Trump, former National Enquirer publisher David Pecker, and Cohen. Cohen testified that is where the 3 men hatched the so-called catch-and-kill scheme to spike stories that could harm Trump's 2016 presidential run. Pecker was asked by prosecutors if the purpose of the deal was to benefit the campaign. That is right, Pecker testified in April. The defense tried to portray Cohen as untrustworthy, Trump's lead attorney calling him the MVP of liars in closing arguments. Tonight, District Attorney Alvin Bragg, who brought the case against Trump, responded.
While this defendant may be unlike any other in American history, we arrived at this trial and ultimately today at this verdict in the same manner as every other case that comes through the courtroom doors, by following the facts and the law, and doing so without fear or favor.
Sources close to Trump tell me the appeals process has already started, and politically that this summer will be a summer of grievance as Trump ramps up his attacks on the prosecution. Robert Costa, CBS News, New York.
President Biden did not comment directly on the verdict, but his re-election campaign did. They write, in New York today, we saw that no one is above the law. Donald Trump has always mistakenly, they say, believed that he would never face the consequences for breaking the law for his own personal gain. They also add that convicted felon or not, Trump will be the Republican nominee for president. Governor Ron DeSantis also taking to social media. He writes that it is often said that no one is above the law, but it is also true that no one is below the law. If the defendant were not Donald Trump, this case would never have been brought. The judge would have never issued similar rulings, and the judge would have never returned a guilty verdict. While Mr. Trump is in New York tonight, just outside his home in Palm Beach over at Mar-a-Lago, a small group of supporters waving flags near Mar-a-Lago. The former president has a strong following here, and his supporters often express their loyalty at demonstrations just like this one. Tonight's impromptu gathering was mostly to show solidarity for Mr. Trump, but as we found out, not everyone in the crowd stands behind him.
We have to stand by our president right now and our country. If we don't, we're going to lose everything. This is third world country right now. There's nothing. First of all, the judge's instructions to the jury was complete, total nonsense. Nonsense. It's not even legal. Not even legal what he did.
Look, is this the right case to have brought for him? Should he go to jail over this? No. He's a disgrace. It's a disgrace to the country.
And while the reaction has been mixed, a recent CBS poll, I should say, finds that the majority of Americans believe that Trump is definitely or probably guilty of charges that he faced in New York today. With that said, the latest polls also continue to show a very tight contest between the current and former president in those key battleground states. Of course, stay with CBS 12 News. We'll keep you updated on the latest surroundings and the guilty verdict. To learn more, just head to CBS12.com. You can also tune in to CBS 12 News this morning for much more.